very good morning, everyone. This is Jeremy Tan from Hong Leong Bank, and I'll be your host for today's session. Welcome to Hong Leong Bank's 5th Sustainability Roundtable, where the discussion for today's webinar is on the topic of circular economy, the way forward, adopting sustainable waste management in Malaysia. If you have any questions for the panelists, kindly use our dedicated Slido, which you can access by scanning the QR code that you have at the bottom of the screen. Alternatively, you can access the Slido feature by clicking the URL available in the YouTube description below. However, we will only be addressing the questions in the Q&A session, and we shall endeavor to address as many as you can, depending on our time. And now, I would like to introduce our panelists and moderator for today's session. So first off, we have with us today, Dr. Nazri Yahaya, the Chairman of the Environmental Quality Council, Department of Environment under the Ministry of Environment and Water. Dr. Nazri took up the position as the Director General of National Solid Waste Management Department under the Ministry of Housing and Local Government in 2007, where he was in charge of formulating and implementing policies on solid waste and public cleansing management. In 2016, he was appointed as Deputy Secretary General in the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment, where his main role was working on the policies regarding the management of land resources, geospatial, surveying and mapping in the country. Currently, he is the chairman of the Environmental Quality Council, where his main role is to advise the minister on the implementation of the Environmental Quality Act 1974. And next we have Professor Aga Muthu, a professor at the Jeffrey Sachs Center on Sustainable Development, specializing in solid and hazardous waste management. He is also a high-level foreign expert for the Ministry of Science and Technology, China. Before joining Sunway University, Professor Aga Muthu spent 44 years as a senior professor at University of Malaya. He is also a visiting professor at Zhejiang University of Technology, Hangzhou, China, and also the Vice President and International Advisory Board member of the Society of Solid Waste Management Experts in Asia and Pacific Islands, and a fellow of the Academy of Sciences Malaysia. And next, we have Ahmad Nadrin bin Ibrahim, the Senior Director of SIPAC Resources Berhad. SIPAC is Malaysia's pioneering developer and provider in integrated renewable energy, green technology, environmental engineering solutions, and construction engineering. In the past 17 years, Ahmad Nadrin has led the development of many projects undertaken by SIPAC in the areas of environment, waste management, and renewable energy, such as, but not limited to, solar projects, waste recycling projects, and waste-to-energy projects. Today, he continues in his pursuit in developing more initiatives and projects related to circular economy, meeting the demands of the future. And next with us today is Zalman Zainal, the Chief Marketing and Communication Officer and Sustainability Working Committee Co-Chairman of Hong Leong Bank Berhad. Zalman oversees the strategy and delivery of the bank's brand promise to various stakeholders through marketing, analytics, PR, CSR, and sustainability efforts. Zalman has more than 2 decades of experience in branding and marketing, starting off his career in the telco industry. He is also currently the co-chairman of Hong Leong Bank's Sustainability Working Committee, overseeing and driving Hong Leong Bank's sustainability efforts. And finally, we have our moderator for today's panel discussion, Nick Sharzal Sulaiman, a partner of Risk Assurance Services for PwC Malaysia. Nick Sharzal is a partner and the Islamic finance leader of PwC Malaysia and has over 18 years of experience in the assurance and advisory profession. He was trained in the UK as a chartered accountant prior to joining PwC Malaysia in 2007. Nick has been involved in a wide range of work in the industry from strategy, governance, internal audit, and risk management. All right, so before we begin with the panel discussion, I would like to welcome Professor Aga Muthu to provide a brief presentation on the waste management industry to set the context for the panel discussion. All right, Professor Aga Muthu, over to you.
Thank you, Jeremy. Let me maximize it. Okay. Good morning once again to everyone and also my panel members. I've been asked to cover the sustainable waste management for circular economy in Malaysia. So it's a challenge to talk about sustainable waste management. That's one thing, and circular economy is a topic by itself. So what I want to do today is to look at the first portion will be looking at waste management scenario and including the policies and the governance. And then in the second portion, I will look at circular economy in Malaysia and also in other countries, actually at least one example. And what are the opportunities and initiatives in Malaysia we have, and what are the, of course, as we go along, we also look at the challenges and including the Malaysian case studies and conclusion. I will start with, as usual, the waste generation. Now, to approximate, we have about 40,000 tons per day of municipal solid waste being generated. I mean, you want to be exact, it's about 38,000. Or about 14 million tons of municipal solid waste generated annually in Malaysia. And our per capita generation is about 1.4. And then more than 1 kilogram per capita, we can say that we are a developed country using the waste as a criteria anyway. And how much of the waste is actually being generated that is being recycled. So if you look at this table here, according to 2019 is 28%, but of course in the 12th Malaysia plan, it was recorded as 30% recycling has been achieved and a target of 40% by 2025. Now, what is being recycled? So if you look at the table on the right, you can see that, the more popular items are aluminum, glass, iron, paper, and plastic. And plastic, of course, is one of the most difficult and challenging issues in the environment, but our recycling rate is about 40 to 45%. And also with the paper, our recycling rate is quite high compared to the other three items. Now, let's look at what is in the waste. I think this is the one that actually causes all the challenges of recycling and reusing, or even any technology that you want to employ. This is the one that determines. And I'm not going to talk about all the items because there's much more than this. I want to highlight on two aspects that is very relevant to today's discussion. Now, everybody knows that Malaysia generates about 45% of food waste. This is the waste from your kitchen and so on. But if you break that into unconsumed food waste, this is the challenge, because at the moment, unconsumed food is actually about 10 to 12% of the 38,000. So you can see that we have more than 4,000 tons of unconsumed food generated every day. And this is actually loss of resources as well as the loss of economy. And what is the other thing that I want to highlight here? So you have paper, plastic, etc., etc. Hazardous waste. Now, household hazardous waste, this is from the houses. It's about 2%, sometimes maybe 3%, but it's about 1 to 3%. You can say that. But this small quantity of household hazardous waste, like fluorescent tube, used containers for insecticides or herbicides and other chemicals, and also unconsumed medicine and so on. Now, this actually contaminates the whole waste that is discarded. And that causes an issue for biological treatment of our waste. So people sometimes ask that, oh, we have 45% of food waste and we have a lot of biomass. Why are we not composting our MSW? Well, the hazardous component has to be completely separated before we even attempt to have some clean compost. So what are the regulations and sections of the Malaysian environmental law that promotes resource circulation? I must admit that actually at the moment, we don't have any dedicated regulations specifically for circular economy or even extended producer responsibility, EPR. Of course, both are in the pipeline. There is a lot of discussions, and even in the 12th Malaysia plan, there is a lot of mention about circular economy implementations, which means we have to wait for the dedicated regulations to be drafted. But at the moment, we do have some regulations that actually guide us, like Environmental Quality Act actually tells us about pollution management and so on. Then we have the Environmental Quality Schedule Waste Regulations, which is more for special waste, which is something unique to Malaysia, where your hazardous waste can be considered as a special waste to be discarded at the landfill. And then, of course, the most important regulation act is the Solid Waste and Public Cleansing Management Act 2007, which is very, very comprehensive because it's based on many developed countries like Japan, US, and China and Australia and so on. So it's a very comprehensive piece of act, and it has got lots and lots of suggestions and regulations for reduction, reuse, and so on. Then the challenge is actually the implementation, of course, and the strategy of management. Now, policies in Malaysia for resource recycling, of course, under the Solid Waste Act and also the Department of Waste Management, we have the Solid Waste Corporation, or SW Corp, which launched the SW Strategic Plan for 2014 to 2020 for the promotion of sustainable solid waste management services. So here we see that there are many strategies covered very broadly, like creating public awareness, including awareness on waste to wealth and waste to energy, and change in behavior of the people, sustainability, improving solid waste management facilities and technologies, enforcement of existing legislations and policies, research and development. So you can see that there is specifically a target towards the long-term goal of zero waste in Malaysia. That is our SW Corp's strategy. And if you look at the governance of solid waste management, I would say it's a little bit complicated because we have many ministries involved in waste management, whether it is the Ministry of Environment and Water, which is a Department of Environment that takes care of the hazardous waste in Malaysia, then Ministry of Housing and Local Government, which has got the National Solid Waste Management Department, and also the Solid Waste Management Corporation, that is for municipal solid waste. Then also many state governments actually intervene with their own regulations and policies, and then even lower we have the local authorities. So it's not a straightforward thing of waste management. And if you look at this example for raw material plastic consumption, which I'm not going to go through in detail, what I'm trying to say is that the agencies or government bodies, there's so many that plays a role in the plastic management, like for example, the raw material supply, or the designing and manufacturing, or the distribution and use of plastic, and discarding plastic, and so on. So plastic management is actually controlled by so many agencies, and that is one of the issues we are facing in terms of the plastic ban. So let's move on to the circular economy, which of course is used by different terms in different countries, like cleaner production or waste minimization, or the Japanese use the word zero waste. It also incorporates extended producer responsibility, which is being pursued now, waste exchange, which is very extensively popular in Taiwan, and eco-industrial parks or industrial symbiosis. Now, the industrial symbiosis is something that is really lacking in Malaysia, although we do have industrial parks, and I'll give you some examples in a few more minutes. So in the circular economy, we can actually implement it at 3 levels. Level 1, we are talking about resource and energy efficiency. This can be achieved by a single company or a unit, and then this is more on a single enterprise. But level 2 is the eco-industrial parks or industrial symbiosis. Now, this is being practiced in many developed countries like Japan and Denmark and so on, where the industrial park is dedicated to the waste minimization and zero waste and so on. But the symbiosis is very clear in these countries. And lastly, the whole municipal area or the whole city actually engages in recycling and interconnected processes. And we can see this in China, for example. And I've also seen this example in Surabaya, Indonesia, where the whole village actually have adapted this zero waste practice, and no waste leaves this kampong from in Surabaya. And there are many similar examples in other parts of the world. So as I mentioned earlier, the problem is we don't have an explicit regulations for circular economy or EPR. Now, let me quickly go through 2 examples where the initiative is already there. Like, for example, the Waste Eco Park by Maida, where they actually established the waste eco park to encourage recycling and so on. So they are the waste eco park developers, managers and operators are involved in this one. I think you know that in many parts of Malaysia, we do have industrial parks, but unfortunately, they are not actually recycling parks. Then for the construction industry, similarly, they have established the construction industry transformation program for the whole industry. And their target is 20% recycling by the year 2020. So I think 20% is a little bit low because countries like India and Japan and China, they are already achieving almost 100% recycling of the construction material. And I want to use one example of a foreign case study. This is taken from Australia, and this actually covers the industrial symbiosis as well as how they can incorporate the zero waste technology. Now, here we are talking about number of industries like nickel refinery, industrial gas producer, industrial chemicals, aluminum refinery, oil refinery. So you can see that this incorporates many industries, and they are all interrelated. That is why I'm calling it symbiosis. The main focus is on nickel, that is here. And the two things that is entering into this system is actually the nickel ore. So you can see the jagged line here, and the bauxite enters the system. But nothing goes out of the system because they take care of everything. The product from, say, for example, CO2 and gypsum is used up by the aluminum refinery. And then the hydrogen and carbon dioxide is used up by the industrial gas producers and so on. So this is what I mean by industrial symbiosis, where many industries actually have an interaction and they ensure that is zero waste established. And I actually have not seen something like this, although we do have circular economy established in Malaysia, in individual factories and so on. Okay, here we are looking at the proposal from the Department of Environment for industrial ecology or symbiosis for abandoned vehicles. So this is the vehicle. So there are many options for plastic, metal recovery, co-processing, and energy recovery and so on. So this is exactly what I mean by industrial symbiosis, but this actually has not been really established. And similarly, here we have the disposal of the industrial bleached earth, which is in the oil palm refining industry. So here also we can actually talk about acetylene producing factory giving the calcium hydroxide for bleaching earth, and then we have the residue gypsum for co-processing or soil conditioner and so on. So this is another example of industrial symbiosis proposed by Department of Environment for Malaysia. So there is also a proposal for circular economy roadmap. So this is specifically for plastic in various stages. So hopefully this will be established very soon. And lastly, I would like to conclude by saying that there is tremendous opportunities for banks to be involved to enhance waste management or circular economy in Malaysia, because waste management is a multi-billion ringgit industry. So there is tremendous scope. But Malaysia does not have a dedicated legal framework on circular economy and EPR, although the 12th Malaysia plan actually is focusing on CE. And there are certain sections, of course, as I discussed earlier, that actually emphasizes the resource circulation, pollution control, and so on. Several initiatives have been taken by DOE or SW Corp, MIDA, CIDB, and others, as you saw just now. So in order to successfully implement the circular economy, top-down and bottom-up approach are required in Malaysia. So there are many Malaysian case studies. As I said, it is unfortunately not a symbiosis case study, but between maybe just two industries generating zero waste scheme. So with that, I would like to conclude, and thank you very much. This is just some of my books. Okay. Yeah, back to you.
All right, thank you, Professor Agamutu, for your presentation and for your insights on sustainable waste management. And I believe that sets the tone for today's panel discussion on adopting sustainable waste management in Malaysia. And now, I would like to welcome all panelists and our moderator for the panel discussion. And I would now pass the time over to Nick to moderate this session. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy, for the kind introduction, and also thank you to Hong Leong Bank for inviting me, and also all of us, to this discussion today. So what I will do is jump straight into the discussion because this is a very interesting topic. I feel so. Professor Aga, brilliant presentation. It's I just find it fascinating that as a country we produce close to 40,000 tons of solid waste every day. And from your presentation, it seems that only a small proportion of this solid waste is recycled. The rest is probably, go to landfills and so on, I presume. So my question is very simple, but, it's very important. Why is this a problem? What is the risk to all of us, to the country, to the community, if this goes on in the future? What's your view?
Okay. Actually, it's not a simple answer. There are a number of factors, I would say. To me, the first and most important thing is that the involvement of the public has to be encouraged, and they should be taught on the source separations. To me, source separation solves 50% of the problem. That is the biggest reason that we cannot recycle many of our materials because they are contaminated. So, like if you allow me, like in Japan, when the housewife throws the plastic, she will wash it first, and then she will hang dry it, and then discard it the next day. So when the collector comes, the plastic is clean. Now, I'm not saying that we should do it. What I'm saying is that don't contaminate the material that should be discarded. So source separation is one of the most important things. Second thing is that, sorry to say this, but our policy system of implementing technology is quite slow. We are using 80% of the total waste collected in Malaysia now goes to the dump sites or landfill. Actually, we have very few sanitary landfills anyway. So 80% goes to the dump sites, and this is why we have a lot of pollution issues. We are looking at sustainable waste management, where we are talking about also integrating other technologies. No, we are very slow in integrating other technologies, and that is another thing. That includes, I'm not saying that we should straight away go to waste to energy or incineration. I'm saying about improving the recycling, improving the composting, the biological treatment. Food waste can go for anaerobic digestion. So that's why I said there are many options that is open, but we are discarding the bulk of the waste into the landfill.
Thank you very much, Professor Aga. My next question goes to Datuk Dr. Nazri Yahya. Professor Aga earlier mentioned about the fact so many different agencies and ministries, has oversight over this issue. He also mentioned about the legal framework over this is far from ideal. What is your view on this topic? Are there more that can be done, or is this not an issue from your perspective?
Thank you, Nick. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good morning to all. First, thank you to Hong Leong Bank for inviting us. Now, back to your question, Nick, and also the presentation by Professor Aga. Yes, there are many different type of acts we regulate waste management in the country, but then you see each of these acts was specified to specific substances. Hazardous and scheduled waste is DOE. Then the solid waste itself is Department of Financial Solid Waste and under the Ministry of Housing. Of course, you have the agricultural waste, it go under Ministry of Agriculture. These actually provide a focus for the industry or the ministry or a department to do their work. But if you goes back to the RMK 12, which provide the synergy for all the ministry to work into, because that is the parent one which charters our 5 years future in waste management. Yeah, if you look waste management vis-a-vis, we're talking about circular economy. It's mentioned in Rancangan Malaysia ke-12 or 12 Malaysia Plan in 34 pages. 34 pages. So we thought different ministry, a different act will provide a disjointed effort, but no. As a former government man, the 33 years of services, we see that we have our own pathway to go. But the most important way is place is where how we can coordinate, we can coordinate these things. Yeah, I think you can hear me.
Yes.
Yeah. How we coordinate it? Because there is always at the federal government there's what they call it a coordination mechanism. For example, there's a Majlis Tanah Majlis what they call it Tanah Negara Majlis Solid Waste or all that, which all the ministry will put their effort on. It goes back to circular economy, vis-a-vis of solid waste management. We are talking about circular economy today here. Rancangan Malaysia, the 12 Malaysia plan provide what is the output and outcome of circular economy. I think definition of circular economy, I'm not so important to me. Everybody can read in the textbook what is circular economy, and like Professor Aga said, many definition. But if you look in the Rancangan Malaysia Ke-12, the government provide what is the output and outcome of circular economy, and goes back to our waste management, where the circular economy in Rancangan Malaysia says the output will be to reduce waste generation. That's where that Professor Aga said generation is coming up, but you don't see it coming down. Hope is circular economy, the waste generation comes down. And circular economy output was supposed to reduce pollution, greenhouse gases, reduce dependency on natural resources, usage of recycling material is being increased, recycling of production waste also increased, and most important, Professor Aga said the extended producer responsibility, the CE in RMK 12 was meant to extend the end of life product which is expanded. That is the output. Now where it goes to? The outcome will be a sustainable ecosystem. So right now I stop there first.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dato. I think you mentioned a few key points there, which very important, and it's great that we get to discuss this as a panel. So following from what Dato mentioned earlier, so my next question goes to you, Nadrin. I've always believed that whenever there is a challenge or an issue like this, private sector also has a big role to contribute towards the solution. So, what is your point of view about this issue? Is this a big opportunity for the industry? I mean, how are you capitalizing on this?
Yeah, thank you very much, Nick, Shelby, for having me today, this morning. Now, before I answer your question, I just want to backtrack a little bit on what Datuk Nazri mentioned in terms of regulatories, acts that has already been put in place. Now, I just want to share with you from the perspective of a developer, when we enter into this business of waste management, renewable energy or environment, I think as clearly what Dato mentioned just now, whatever is being mentioned in the policy basically is the end game. And whatever, I think for us developer is how to reach the end game, something must guide us. So that's where the X comes into place. I think just now Professor Agamutu displayed like 3 acts or clauses just now. So those are basically the parameters of how we move forward. The guidelines for us, in order not to swerve too much to the left or to the right, but it's basically guiding us with moving forward. It is good that the pathway is there, right? So that enables us to be focused in terms of what we are doing. And it is not somewhat confusing, I would say, after going through many of these kinds of processes, is that yes, there are many government agencies and whatnot, but at the end of the day, when it comes to implementation, there would be a point where there would be a lead department, for example. So last time when we developed our projects under the National Solid Waste Department, so they were the lead. So we had communicated with them, and obviously we had to conform with other regulatory requirements. Say, for example, Department of Environment, say water department or whatever. So it is there. It is there as a pathway for us to push through. But of course, at the end of the day, it's up to the developer, to answer and to comply with whatever been put in place. Otherwise, we would be building, say, for example, waste to energy plant next to KLCC, for example. So these are the things that create those pathways, I would say, and giving a direction in terms of moving forward. Now, coming back to your question, in terms of opportunities, yes. the whole industry, as Professor Agamuti mentioned just now, there's 38,000 tons and how to resolve it. So this basically creates opportunities, especially to those who can identify what they are, because the spectrum is very large. You know, when Professor just now mentioned about what do you call this, unused, unconsumed food waste, right? Unconsumed food waste. So of course, we know that there's like 4,000 tons a day. So the question is, how do we address this? You know, so to address this, one of the ways, as Professor mentioned just now, yes, if our society is advanced, you know, we have this a lot of these feelings towards you know, betterment of environment, we could resolve this at home, you know, by separating, as what Professor mentioned. But all is not lost. You know, at the end of the day, when there is a developer who sees an opportunity, say for example like us, you know, what we see is that this food waste, organic waste, can actually be separated. You know, it need not necessarily be separated at home. You know, that's one way. But you can also, if everything all fails, we can also separate it at our facility. You know, so this is one of the efforts that we are building in our latest project, which is the smart solid waste modular advanced recovery and treatment. It is it's a mouthful project, you know, where it consists of many types of processing, you know, in order for us to provide the end game. The end game is that, yes, we get a cleaner air. There's no foul smelling coming from the landfill. There's no pilferages along the way, and we get renewable energy, you know, from, say for example, the food waste that we segregate or we secure at our plant. We put it into a digester. The digester captures the methane. The methane is being destructed by using it as fuel and converting it into electricity. So the opportunity is there. It's just a matter of trying to find out which technology suits the best kind of waste, you know, that is out there. I hope that
Indeed.
answers it.
Thank you very much for the insights. I mean, it sounds to me that, you know, it can be a fairly technical and technologically driven solution, which is why, you know, we need the involvement of the private sector as part of this solution. Okay, so my next question, I will go to Zalman, but after that, I will then go back to Datuk Nazri to expand on what you mentioned earlier. So Zalman, Nadrin mentioned about these industry opportunities and so on. I mean, from your perspective as from the banking industry, do you agree with this assessment? You know, as a bank, is this something that you're supporting further?
We're definitely very supportive of not just the circular economy, but the sustainable business and sustainable economy. We realize we are a big intermediation company within the economic processes. So we are a big part of the economy. So the obvious way that we can play our part, of course, we talked about just now. Why do we still put waste into landfills? Can we look at innovations and technologies that can dispose or recycle waste in a better way? So obviously, our part there is, of course, as a financier. So we can help to finance innovations of companies that are eager to come into this space. In fact, when it comes to renewable energy, I think we're one of the biggest supporters in Malaysia. We've already cleared about 2 billion ringgit worth of financing limits for renewable energy projects. And it's an area that we want to grow even more. Other than directly financing innovations or companies that are involved in this ecosystem, we feel that we also want to work with our companies as well as our suppliers in looking and helping them, encourage them to be more sustainable in their businesses. So early this year, beginning from last year, we have introduced the ESG policy or framework into our credit scoring platform for our customers. We've also introduced something similar to our assessment method of suppliers. So what we try to do is, when we look at our suppliers, when we onboard customers, we evaluate how advanced or we give them a rating in terms of their sustainability or ESG maturity. We do rank them, and then what we try to do is we try to work with suppliers as well as customers to try and move them up the scoring system or the value chain. And we do that by working with customers, and we focus a lot on education, which is one of the reasons why we're having this roundtable today. It's so that we can get the word out and work with customers as well as suppliers in order the knowledge, the expertise, help maybe even working with the experts like people in our panel today, as well as any other experts here to work with customers as well as our suppliers to be able to increase their ability to form a more sustainable way of doing business. In fact, we also have a program, it's called HLB Launchpad, where we look at startups who pitch ideas to us, and we select, of course, the startups with the best ideas and the best business model, and then work with them. One of our winners from the last round is this company called Earth that actually does e-waste management. And that's I think, relatively new topic when it comes to recycling or recyclable waste management. But very, very important, especially nowadays with 2 years of a pandemic where people are buying more electronic items for work, laptops and such. We'll definitely see more electronic waste. So we have worked with them to develop something like e-waste guideline for ourselves, so that we properly dispose of our e-waste. In fact, we did, as part of this initiative, we did an activity a couple of months ago to collect our e-waste, not only which is our official e-waste, our company e-waste, but also from our staff, and we managed to collect about 10 tons of e-waste, laptops, computers, and other electronic products. I think a lot of it is about education and awareness and communication.
Yeah,
so we spend a lot. Sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
Right. It's very interesting that you. What I wanted to say was, I find it impressive that as a bank, you're not just looking at it from the financing perspective, but you're also directly or indirectly supporting innovation as well by working with entrepreneurs. And later, I would like to expand that discussion further to all of the panel speakers, because I think the topic of innovation is definitely very important when we deal with something as big as this. My next question, I would like to go back to Dato'. You raised your hand earlier. Would you like to expand on what has been mentioned earlier? Dato', can you?
I'd like to expand what Professor and Nadreen saying about the many different agency, different acts. To us, that's not so important. The important is the private sector must know, and it must be clear in the government guidance where to go. EIA, where to go. Waste to energy, where to go. Sometimes the problem is when people work in silo. You do what you want, you don't care of others people, then that's a problem. But with a different act, to me, it's not an issue. The issue is only it must be clear to the private companies where to approach, who to approach. That means must be clear in the guidance. And secondly, on technologies, I heard about Zamal talking technology, Nadreen telling all technologies. Now, technology in waste management is actually not rocket science. I think Nadreen knows it. It's not rocket science. But the perception is, from the bank, from the bank, from financial institution, and from the people. From the bank, if they have never heard the name of the technology is a new, then you sure difficult to get the financing. But luckily, in waste management, the banks knows what is an incinerator, what is a pyrolysis, what is what they call it, other waste to energy biogas. So when I was the Director General last time, we have to call a few banks to explain what is this technology all about. Because I can't blame the bank, because banks are looking into finance, the feasibility of project. If the technology is something that they never heard before, do you think the banks will come in? Because the risk is very great. And Nadreen knows WTE is not 20,000, 20 million. It's 100 of millions sometimes. It's 100 million. So the banks and the private sector and the government must come together to understand. The government must understand, or the private sector must understand what is the banking needs. The banks must understand what is the technology that the government promote and the private sector comes up. Now, back to your question, one last question. You asked me, if generation of waste, what happened? Remember, management of solid waste or integrated solid waste, 5 elements: reduction, collection, transportation, treatment, and disposal. If you miss one of the element, it's not a sustainable waste management. If you have good collection, good transportation, but you don't have treatment, for example, waste energy like Nadine, or you don't have a sanitary landfill, so all your effort of making good collection, transportation, recycling, but there's nowhere to send, so what's the point? There's not an integrated, it's not a seamless approach. So these are the things when we talk about that, the five element is connected with finance, human resources, and also technologies.
Right,
You see that
definitely.
then
Yeah.
you can move forward.
So it seems that you cannot look at it in silo. There need to be an integrated solution. Professor Aga, what's your view on this?
Yeah, I agree. But I think it's not the technology that is an issue here. What we are having is that the awareness and the public cooperation is more important than anything else. You see, like for example, the simplest example is waste separation. I would say it did not succeed so well is because many people do not understand the concept of what is waste separation, where should it go, and that is why, of course, enforcement was coming in. But if people doesn't know what to do, what is there to enforce? So to me, I think we should start from the bottom, train the people very basically how to do the waste separation, and then we can succeed. We can have all the regulations in Malaysia, but we can't succeed unless the people cooperate and they are willing to participate. And one more thing I would like to say here is that we must be very, very cautious about the circular economy, because many countries have implemented this 5 years or 10 years ago. Now they are slowing down because there are examples of where infrastructures established for the sake of circular economy is now actually slowing down because there is no waste. So there is a group that says that, oh my God, to keep the circle going, we must generate waste. Now, we don't want to do that. A good example is that the waste from UK was actually transported to Netherlands for incineration, because the incinerator in Netherlands is 3,000 tons a day, and the capacity is so big, they don't have enough waste. And of course, they claim that they are establishing circular economy, but to me, this is, it increases the cost of waste management. So we don't want to make that mistake here. So we have to be very cautious. I have nothing against circular economy, but we have to be careful not to make the same mistakes that other developed countries are already making. Thank you.
Of course. So the outcome itself is, is very important as well. Prof. Aga, I have a follow-up question, and this one comes from the audience actually. And the question is, everybody understands that sustainable waste management is good for the country. However, why is it very challenging to get people to separate this at source? I mean, I get the impression is that people know that they're supposed to separate waste, but it's not yet getting to that stage where it's good enough. What is your view? What is the challenges there, and how do we turn this around?
It's very simple. You saw the composition of the waste I showed for Kuala Lumpur. There's too many things, and when people just talk about recycling paper, plastic, glass, and metal, what about other things? The question they ask me is, where do I put the diaper? So that is why they are not clear exactly how to do it and where to discard things in the right place. And certain things cannot go for recycling at all. It has to go for other options. So that is why I still feel that we should go back to the people, train them from the basics of what is waste separation and what is recyclable, what is not recyclable. Then we come up from there. We can establish, because most of the Malaysians, I would say that they are educated people, so it's a bit easier to actually implement these things.
Right, thank you. Nadrin, would you like to expand on that, please?
Yeah, I think we have been operating a sanitary landfill for the last since 2015, and we have seen efforts also made by the state government and also SW Corp as the agency responsible. They have been making efforts in terms of asking the public to basically to do this reduce, reuse, and recycle activities. And what we've seen over the last since 2015, there has not been a drastic drop, I would say. More so during the last 1 year, to our surprise, since COVID, March last year, the numbers didn't actually go down, to be honest with you. The numbers went up, you know, and we were very surprised. And we found this after our year-end audit, which we conducted just recently. And we found that the numbers actually for the whole of last year, it went up, right? So I think one of the things that could be contributing to this is obviously our habits. You know, our habit as a country becomes more developed. I think Professor can attest to this. As a country more developed, more things you throw. Because as you see nowadays, when people go out there and to buy something, the packaging is so beautiful. You know, packaging, a packet within a packet within a packet. This is a very a continuous behavior. You know, marketing people try to be more innovative in terms of how they sell the product. You know, and this one and this doesn't also change at home, because at our home, if you notice, ladies and gentlemen, the way that we discard our rubbish from the kitchen is also the same. We put plastic into a plastic and into the plastic. So for these kind of things, you know, to change, it really needs a lot more effort. I mean, off the cuff, I think one of the things that the authorities could do, say for some countries I've read, you know, they limit a household. You can only throw 5 bags a month or something like that. You know, they give you a tag or a plastic bag, you know. So this is one of the ways that we can do. Yes, education, you can do it, but I think it takes maybe another 1 or 2 generation, you know, our children or maybe our grandchildren, you know, to have that kind of understanding and what do you call this, care, you know, in how they deal with that waste issues, you know.
Yeah, that's right. And also, in my view, I think this issue about waste at home is going to continue to become bigger because our population is increasing, household income is increasing, which means people buy things. And the way we buy things also right now, a lot of online delivery. I mean, it's very common, you know, that I see something get delivered to my house. Small items get packaged in plastic and paper and boxes and so on. It's you know, it's mind blowing. My next question goes to you, Zalman. And again, I want to see the perspective of the banking industry. I mean, you mentioned various things that as a bank you did, but as a whole, the banking industry as a whole, do you think there are more that can be done by the banking industry to facilitate this issue?
I think definitely, because we're such a big part of the economy and consumption and such. One of the things really is about, we've talked about how awareness of this subject matter is still quite low, not just consumers but among companies. And it's, you know, to Datuk's point just now, how previously a lot of banks were not very aware of such new technologies, which is why at least we, Hong Leong Bank, is trying to build up this knowledge base. We've hired subject matter experts. For example, we have onboarded renewable energy expert to help us understand that aspect better. And since then, you know, we have been able to really aggressively grow our renewable energy financing business. And we are looking at the other related areas as well. As long as there's more understanding by the banks of understanding these new technologies or methods or companies that are working in this business, then it will definitely help. But other than that, we're also spending a lot of effort to communicate and create awareness, not just among our staff, among our client base, among potential clients. And we also do just simple education among general public as well. So we spend a lot of effort in social media, trying to educate children, kids from early age, right? How being more sustainable is not only good for the now, it's definitely for the future of the country. And there's definitely a lot more things like that we can do as long as we put efforts together.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the direction is very clear. I think it's very clear that you know, with people are becoming more and more aware about this issue. But I think one of the issue is a race against time. You know, whether, you know, do we have enough time before the global temperature increase, which causes a lot of catastrophe to humanity and the rest of it. So it is a bit of a race, really. My next question goes to back to you, Dato. I mean, you mentioned about RMK12, about the government plans to basically you know, take this forward. So what is the way forward? Can you provide provide us some insights what can be done as a as a country?
Thank you, Nick. Yeah, we have policies, good policies in place, but the important question that you asked, what can be done? The implementation part of it. First thing goes back to Zalman Nadrin, Professor, is a mindset. Yeah. First, we have to change the mindset of the people if you want to do. If you, for example, we have under our what you call privatization, we said you have to do separation at source, so that when the construction company comes and collect it, they know, because they give 2 days to collect from the domestic waste, 1 day recyclables. But if the mindset of people does not change, whatever you tell them, it won't move. For example, we said sometimes they give an excuse. If we spread our domestic waste, when the lorry came, they throw in one lorry without separation. So all their effort of separation gone to waste. That type of excuse. But then you see, if you look into your dustbin, you can't find newspaper, newsprint, bottle, aluminum can, because all these have been put a value on it. So they sold off to the Surat Khabar Lama people. What Nazrin says about people putting plastic in plastic actually is the soil one, the thin film plastic, which don't have the value attached to it. Plastic bottle aluminum can, we have a value. You got the market, you see how much per kg worth. So these are the things that we have a headache. So you ask me how to move forward. We have the act, we have the regulation, everything. To me, two-pronged action. For the old people like us, we need to use the cane, which is we have to have the penalty being imposed. Right now we have the regulation, but nobody get caught for throwing more rubbish in the bins, put everything that's not separate. We have the regulation, you must separate, but if you look in the bin, it's not separation. So we must put the cane issues in place. For the young people, of course, the public awareness must come into play, because you need times. Japan, hundreds of years that they change mindset. I think that Professor Agamutu knows it. Hundreds of years. When we went to Japan, they say with 300, 400 years public awareness campaign. So my minister then said, we don't have 300 years. We only got 10 years or 30 years to play. So it's the mindset is the most difficult part.
Yes.
I goes back to the question of Nadrin, Professor, and also Zalman. The mindset of people. They know. If you ask everybody, do you know about recycling? 80-90% know how to recycle, what recycling is good. But do you recycle? I think less than 50%. So in Malaysia, knowing and doing is two different things.
Yes.
So the doing part, how to move the doing part. For me, as an ex-government servant, I said we must crack down using laws like the Singaporean that. But it's the future is not good, because it's culture. You have to change the culture. If you change our people, they go everywhere. Also, they become clean people, because it's culture.
Right.
But if you the stick, but for the short-term measure, the stick must come in. That's my personal value.
Thank you very much, Dato. So I'm going to ask Prof. Aga for you to expand on that. But also I'd like to add one question from the audience, and the question is, this issue, if it's not resolved, let's say if we don't deal with this issue of waste management properly, will it have an impact to our to climate risk, to environment? So maybe you can expand on that as well. Prof. Aga, to you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Nick. Yeah, Dato said we have the cane, but we're not using the cane. You see, but I want to go one step further. Actually, Malaysians, you can't just enforce certain things and then expect them to do something, which they think is not their business, which is. So what I say that there must be some incentives together with the enforcement. I don't know that we can plan incentives in terms of tax exemption or the assessment or whatever, or points for them to redemption. So see, in Malaysia, money works, whatever it is. So I think we should use both, actually, the enforcement as well as the incentives. That's one option we have. You're talking about what happens if this continues. As I said earlier, the 80% goes to the dump sites or a few to sanitary landfills. And I think Nadreen will know that there are two big issues from the dump sites. One is the landfill leachate, and the other one is the greenhouse gas. Now, greenhouse gas is actually a serious issue for global warming, and it can contribute about 5% of the global warming. So it is an issue, and we are not actually going down in terms of waste generation. We are going up. Every year it's increasing is about at least 2%. But I can also say that it is achievable in the sense that, like Japan, the waste doesn't increase anymore. The per capita is going down. Denmark, the per capita is going down. So it is achievable. And we should be working in that direction to reduce the per capita and the total waste generation, so that, you know, we will also don't want to contribute to the global warming in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. My next question goes to you, Nadreen. You know, from the private sector, what is the way forward that you see? What are your wish lists to basically make this you know, solutions a reality? Can you unmute yourself, Nadreen?
Oh, sorry about that. Well, the wish list is obviously from the business perspective, we want to build more facilities, right? But we realize as the country matures, patterns of consumption, patterns of disposal of this will also change, right? By that happening, companies also will have to adapt, you know, to the way the society and also the way that the waste management is being implemented. Waste method technology has to adapt, you know. But coming back to what Professor mentioned just now, and to your question regarding the cost, yes, in the future, if it's not maintained or reduced, this cost will definitely increase. You know, there'll be lesser areas for you to develop landfills. You know, at the same time, concurrently, human beings shall encroach into the surrounding of those facilities. You know, so cost will go up. You know, but the issues about one of the reasons why cost will go up is, of course, these issues regarding NIMBY, not in my backyard. You know, people want to throw rubbish, but they don't want those facilities nearby them. You know, they prefer that those facilities to be 100 kilometers away. I just give an example. We are building Malaysia's advanced waste treatment system, but we are located in the middle of an estate. When the previous minister, who was also a promoter of modern technologies of waste to energy, so she asked, "Why is your WTE in the middle of estate?" You know, so. When you build this kind of facility, you know, other countries, I think Professor Dato, both of these gentlemen have been to Japan. Yeah, that's next door to houses. They even have kindergartens inside their, what do you call this, WTE. They have onsens also inside their WTE, you know. So things will go up, most definitely. But of course, in terms of opportunities, moving forward, it is there. It's just that we have to choose the right one to suit at the right timing, you know, more so for that time.
Yes, indeed. So I think that is the you know, it's not straightforward. It's quite complex, isn't it? It's a balance of, you know, what people want, you know, how, you know, they want things to happen, but they don't want it to be in their backyard, like you say. My next question goes to you, Zalman, I mean, you already given your point of view as a banker, but, you know, perhaps if I ask your point of view as a citizen, I mean, what is your wish list and how we can address this better going forward?
Wish list, I guess it's related to what Nadreen said. People and companies need to adapt. They're just so used to doing things the old way. A simple example is, if I talk about our company, Hong Leong Bank, one of our biggest waste that we produce is actually paper-based waste. That's because the banking industry traditionally used a lot of paper to fill out forms, documents, and such. But we've spent so much effort in the last 2 to 3 years to digitize everything that we do, and we don't use paper unnecessarily. So it's about people's changing their behavior and the ways of doing things. It's as simple as being aware that there are separate bins for recyclable materials. We have recycling bins on every floor, but we constantly have to remind people that when you want to throw away your rubbish, please use the recycling bin. And it is very important, little things like making sure you clean your plastic wares before you throw in the recycle bin, because that helps the recyclability of the materials. So I think people just need to change their mindset about how they've been doing things the old way. And it's not that difficult. Usually you get just so used to doing things the old way, you think it's so difficult to make that little change. Once you do it once or twice, it'll be very easy to get these new habits and behaviors. But we have to keep reminding ourselves, our neighbors, our friends, our colleagues, our customers and clients. I think that would be my wish, because in the end, my kids, I have an 18-year-old and a 9-year-old daughter. I want to make sure that they have a fantastic Malaysia and Earth for when they grow up,
Yeah, indeed. But also I think just an anecdote, but sometimes the solution have to make sense as well. Yesterday I went to a restaurant which banned all the plastic straws, so we don't have plastic straw anymore. But then I noticed that the cover, they actually changed it from paper to plastic. I thought that, you ban something but you create something else. But anyway, just an anecdote. Okay, so my next question is from the audience, and feel free, any of you can take this question. And I didn't know this before, but it's very interesting. The question is, there are actually 7 types of plastics, and only 3 types can be recycled in Malaysia. So very interesting. I didn't know this. What are the challenges of us having the facility to recycle all types of recyclables in Malaysia? Any of you would like to take this? Yes, Prof. Aga.
Yeah, I think recycling actually depends on 2 things. One is the technology, and the other one is the economy. And recyclers want to make money. They don't want to recycle if there is no returns. So if you look at the plastics, for example, polystyrene is not very popular in recycling. I think, to my knowledge, there's only 1 or 2 plants that actually do it. So even sometimes, paper, if the cost of paper goes down, nobody wants to collect your paper. If the metal price goes down, nobody wants to collect a metal. So even they collect, they keep it in the store. So basically, it is underlying fact is dollars and cents. It's not that nobody wants to do it. I mean, you can pack it and send it to somebody, but they don't want if the price is not right. And this is the problem with recycling, and the ups and downs of the cost, So I think the technology is there. Most of the recycling can be done. But if you look at e-waste, for example, we don't have many facilities in Malaysia, but they still collect it, export it to Singapore or Japan or Taiwan, because there is real dollars and cents there. So it boils down to the cost more than the technology.
Okay. Indeed. You mentioned a very important point there, because whether we like it or not, mindset and awareness is one thing, but as human beings, we are highly driven by economic incentives, so which is why we cannot ignore economics at all from this. Okay, so anybody would like to expand on that topic?
Yeah, I think just one on what. Just to expand on what Professor mentioned. I mean, from the perspective of a manufacturer who's wanting to buy these raw materials, right? They will look at the price. Say, for example, the price of plastic resin, say, for example, in the manufacturing of plastic products, right? They would have to compare what would be the price that they would buy from the market, either the resin or recyclables. From the recyclable itself, it's not that straightforward, as easy. I just give an example. The normal plastic mineral bottle, that actually consists of, to us laymen, we think it's plastic, but to manufacturers, it is not. There's actually 3 components which is attached to that bottle. But to detach and to separate and to clean those 3 components, right? There is cost to it. For you to clean the bottles, to separate the cap and the ring, and away from the bottle itself, there's a cost. So from the manufacturer's point of view, right? If that cost is more than buying cheaper, more expensive than buying raw materials directly from companies, of course they will go towards that direction. Because at the end of the day, as Professor mentioned just now, it's the economics,
Okay. Great. Nadrin, I have another question from the audience, and the question is about SciPark. So naturally, you are the person that I have to answer. And the question is, SciPark decided to go for a waste-to-energy plant. What was the triggering point that made you, as an organization, decide on that?
Okay, I think this stems back to just now, the whole ecosystem where the business comes in. So for SciPark, we saw this as an opportunity. You know, at that time, the then Director General was Datuk Nazri himself. So that was when we brought up this idea to the government. You know, the federal government at that time, they were wanting to build a sanitary landfill at the same location where we were building. And then there was also issues related to environment faced by the state at that time, which was number one, pollution from existing landfill, complaints by the public, you know. So this added momentum, you know, impetus to our company to provide alternative solutions, you know. I mean, we have to study what is going around the world, not only in our country, you know, whereby we cannot say continue doing business the way that we are continuing. For example, we cannot just continue being landfills because land itself is getting more valuable, you know. So when we saw this opportunity, we saw Negeri Sembilan. Negeri Sembilan is a small country, you know, just like Singapore. Singapore, a small country, they have like 7, 8 incinerators, for example. So for Negeri Sembilan to do the same thing again and again, it would not make sense, you know, at least from our perspective. So that's why we had to pitch this to the government, to the authorities back then, and say, hey, let's do something else different. You know, mind you, at that time, the federal government was also developing its own waste-to-energy project. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Dato', was the last place was Beroga, if I'm not mistaken. That was at that time. But we saw that the government had appetite. Okay, so for us, it was a right opportunity. There was a land made available, and the government wants to develop that into a sanitary landfill. And then for us, we added a value. You know, we came up with another proposal saying that, hey, let's not do the project the old way. Let's do it in a modern way. You know, so I think that's essentially, if you ask me, that was one of the reason why we went into waste to energy. But our waste to energy is not only waste to energy per se. We also included an element of recycling. So as I said, we do receive waste from the state of Negeri Sembilan. We process it. We try and do recycling. Say, for example, we remove aluminium, steel, ferrous and non-ferrous metals. And we also remove organic away from the municipal waste. So that in itself creates an activity itself, one activity, new business to be had, and the other one, the waste is being put directly into the waste energy, you know. So this is how we see it.
Right. Yeah. Excellent. Dato', yes, please.
Yeah, I follow up to Nadrin. Yes, it's a government, one of the government target or aspiration to have waste to energy plant in Malaysia. Is Nadrin quoted Beroga, it changed to, at last it changed to Kuala Lumpur, pertama bringing all that move. Issue comes back to what Nadrin says just now, the NIMBY syndrome. The EIA is approved, everything approved, blah, 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 blah. Then at the end of the day, the people voice their concern. They don't want to be here. They don't want to be here. They talk us to court, they can talk everything. So to me, we must have a very good, very educated public. Yeah, they know what is right, what is hype, what is per se. If they were saying that waste to energy like Nadrin building is very harmful to the people, fine. But if you look in Tokyo alone, there's 30 of it. If you see Singapore, 7 in it. They are talking, said the emission from the incinerator kills people. But we don't have data saying that people died in Singapore, people died in Tokyo because of this emission. But then again, the perception is the one that the government have difficulty to address. Yeah, that's the government on that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So I think it takes a lot of centralized approach to make this happen. But I think the point about people's objection is not just about waste. I think recently I watched a documentary about the housing problems in Los Angeles, and it's very clear that the solution is to build more high density property. But people complain because they don't want, the price of their property to go down because of this high density property. So there are lots of economic interest there. The next question from the audience is actually very good. Here it says that the focus on recycling hasn't been, a lot of them have been placed on household, but actually when you look at it, it's the industry that produces the most waste, the industrial waste. Are we doing enough as a country to target this heavy industry in terms of how they manage their waste? So I suppose my question is, one, do you think that as a country, are we managing our industrial waste really well? And number two, what can be done? Anybody who want to take that question?
Yeah, maybe I can chip in on this. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, industry produce waste. Yes. I mean, from our perception, yes, it's a big factory, big facility, whether they produce waste. Now, industry itself, they are also money-making entity. They try and make money left, right, center, up, above, everywhere, right? So, to be honest with you, industry also sells their waste. They make money. We operate a sanitary landfill. We are licensed operator by the government, and we are also authorized to collect industry waste. But I can tell you that the number of tonnage that we receive from the industry surrounding areas, namely because we operate in Lukut, Podikson, and the surrounding area are Seremban and Ilai. So these are the two industrial areas, of the state. But the numbers doesn't commensurate with the numbers of businesses around there. Because I think that these companies, as I said to you, they also, make money out of their waste. Because there's money to be made, for sure. Because there are people who's buying paper, there are people who's buying plastics, packaging materials, etc., and
Right.
they are making money. But more so, this company itself, from what I have observed during the last, since 2015, we've been operating, they themselves have been improving their waste, waste management. I can see that they are, in terms of packaging, they have improved. I don't see that many plastics as before. I think because company needs to be efficient in terms of their costs. So, I mean, yes, I think from the perspective of a recipient of waste, the numbers are not that great as we perceive it to be. But I think that which is in a way is positive. It's positive. I mean, these companies are taking steps into improving their business. That Nick.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay, brilliant, gentlemen. I think that has been a wonderful conversation. I definitely learned a lot today. So I think before we close, I would like to ask each of you to provide a 1-minute summary to conclude your point of view, your thoughts, and what you want other people to remember from this conversation. Prof. Aga, maybe we can start with you. Can you unmute yourself, please? Yes. Great.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much, Nick. Yeah. As I said earlier, Malaysia has got one of the best policies, regulations, and act for waste management. And of course, they're also going towards circular economy, no problem. But I think what is lacking is the acceptance by the public and the awareness of the public, which is causing more problem than anything else. And we can achieve if we can actually train the Malaysian public to change their attitude. Then we can actually go forward with integrated waste management, which is the in thing for Malaysia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Dato', your view, please.
On this waste management, my tagline actually, don't waste waste. Because waste is a resource. It's a resource for other people. If we can make sure that the waste generated by one sector of the economy is being used as a feedstock, like Nadine was saying just now, it's feedstock, people selling for feedstock of other industry. You was talking about the virgin plastic resin and the recycled resin. If it's able to go into the loops of the circular economy, actually one thing about circular economy is not new, Nick. For 1 minute. Last time we call it cradle to cradle, but circular economy is more sexier term. Together, nobody. But it was long time before. So my point is that first we must do the reduction. The public awareness must come in, and if we can reduce the waste, then don't waste the waste. Give to Nazrin so that it can make to RE to material. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Dato'. I shall remember that. Nadrin, your summary, please.
Well, I think it's a concerted effort. I mean, all parties, not only the technology side, not only the regulatory, but also not including, don't forget our friend Cik Salman, So the banks also has to come into play, with regard to financing and so on. But mind you, I mean, from developers' point of view, when we look into the banks, we are also looking into favorable, what do you call this, favorable packages. Don't forget us. Because as you know, to develop this kind of projects is technology. I think since we started this presentation, when Prof started this presentation, and now we've been using this word technology. Technology come at a cost, right? The irony is that we want everything clean. We want the best, the cheapest electricity from, say, for example, from solar, whatever. But we are unable to pay for the technology, So, well, yes, I think developer looks, at all angles, more so from Hong Leong Bank, So we look forward to a better future together. Thank you very much.
Solar waste is already a problem now.
Thank you. Salman, your summary, please. Can you unmute, please?
Keep forgetting that, but I think Nadrin has summarized it mostly for Hong Leong Bank. But maybe I can say, we understand how important the role of banks is in this topic of not just waste management, circular economy, but also sustainability. And I think in the last few years, you've seen a lot more emphasis put not only by banks as well as by the regulator. Hong Leong Bank is definitely serious about this. We're very passionate about the subject, which is why we have already implemented a screening process when it comes to ESG related items when we onboard customers, for example. We do support innovations with our programs like HAB Launchpad. We are here for our customers. There was a lot of talk about incentives. Currently, how we approach it is we want to work with customers. We have an inclusionary approach. We have a few sectors or a few sectors which are definitely general exclusions, but overall, we want to try to work with our customers, work with them to try to improve in areas that they can improve when it comes to ESG. We're also looking at potentially in future when customers have improved their ESG rating with us, there could be potentially other offers that come in terms of incentives or other benefits that come when we take products and financing with us. So that's definitely something that we're working on. And we're here for all our customers. The last point is this, I wanted to make about waste management. I think treating the waste is important, but it's just my personal view. Also, I see it in Hong Leong Bank. We should also work at consumption and reducing of consumption because that is actually the source of the problem. It's hard to change your behaviors, but even a company like Hong Leong Bank, we're able to reduce our paper use, for example, by really shifting everybody's mindset. We have to spend a lot of efforts and maybe a little bit on technology to digitize our business, but a lot of it is achievable and we've been able to do it. So I personally just encourage everyone, companies as well as individuals, to look at consumption. There are a lot of things that we consume because we want to, not because we need to. And there could be a simpler alternative to that as well. It's just taking that step to changing the way we do things.
Great, thank you very much, Salman. So I think with that, we close our discussion. I'd just like to thank all of you again, all of the panelists for providing your interesting and wonderful point of view. Also, I'd like to thank the organizers, Hong Leong Bank, and also the organizing team, Mandy, Jeremy, and many others who actually made this possible. And also, I would like to thank all of you, the audience who are listening to this, who are contributing the questions. Hope that you've had a very fruitful time during the last 1 hour. So I think with that, I close the discussion, and then I wish all of you a great day. And please remember, let's treat our waste seriously and let's recycle. Thank you very, very much. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.